What's up? Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Roll Pod. We are coming off the Crimson Tide A-Day Scrimmage, more spring practice, situational type of thing. Alex, Mike, and myself were in Bryant-Denny Stadium on Saturday afternoon. We got a good look at each position room. We learned some things after the fact when it comes to some injuries, and Kalen DeBoer kind of alluding to Austin Mack dealing with some things. We'll start there. I know we talked a little bit off camera about it, but Alex, we'll start with you. Where are you kind of at with that whole thing? Do you feel like we maybe should have known that before? If you knew, the whole world, but the Crimson Tide faithful and the media were going to see that, and one quarterback looked far better than the other. Does that have to do with injury? Does it not? We know how we feel about Keelan Russell, but Alex, we'll start there.
All of those questions are why you tell somebody beforehand. You don't have to tell the whole world, but you need to tell somebody so it can get out there. It's kind of what I alluded to in my column. Injuries are a touchy subject, and it sounds like it's kind of like Ty at the end of the year, where he's not injured, but he's not healthy either. And the problem is you don't know this until after you watch 2 hours of football, where literally everybody in Bryant-Denny Stadium and everybody tuned into live streams or all this other stuff you're not supposed to have, is all they care about is the quarterback position. So they've made a judgment for 2 hours straight, and then you come in after the fact and say, oh, by the way, the guy who was the starter, who took the first team reps first, wasn't himself. And it's like, you need to set expectations. And I was just thinking as you're going through all this, it's kind of what the value in having a broadcast team is, or cluing your broadcast team is, so they can say in that first drive, oh, by the way, this is what's going on. The whole situation seemed set up to kind of hurt Austin in a sense, not just that, but the offensive line play. But the question, you're right, is, how injured was he? How much did it limit him really? We don't know. It's just unfortunate we don't really have all of that information. And what we're left to judge with is something that looked pretty definitively like one quarterback is better than the other. And it was 12, not 10.
So I did a radio interview earlier this morning, and they asked me, was the difference that big? I said it's not a night and day difference. I feel like people are dumping on Austin Mack a little bit too much after Saturday. He made some nice throws down the field. I think people kind of forget about that. I think Keelan Russell, it looks better from a final stat line standpoint, if you will, because he was able to make those 2 4th down throws at the goal line. One to Marshall Pritchett and one to Latsier Brooks. Mm-hmm. I think Austin Mack, a couple of his drives stalled. But Austin Mack was still completing some passes down the field. I think obviously the big mistake was the interception to Drake Kirkpatrick, where it was, kind of jumped the route deep there. I don't know if it was a night and day difference. And you have to take into account who was playing the first team defense, who was playing the second team defense. There was obviously a rotation there. Austin did get the first snaps, with the first team against the first team defense. And then it was Keelan with the 2s. Then they flipped it. So it was Keelan with the 1s, Austin with the 2s. They did that twice. And then that red zone period, it was 1 of Austin and 5 of Keelan. And that was because of Austin's injury. As far as Keelan saying it, he needs to learn how to say it in a much more concise, direct, and clear manner. Mm-hmm. This is his 3rd season as Alabama's coach. You can kind of understand maybe if it was his first year, he hasn't really been used to quite the media attention, maybe at Washington and Fresno and before that. At some point, I think he just needs to learn how to speak about injuries a little bit more clearly. As much as people, I want to say, dogged or accused Nick Saban of not being good with the media, he was always pretty clear with injuries. Whenever he was asked about a player being injured, he kind of gave here's what he has, here's how long he's out. You can say day to day, you can say week to week.
He would have hated injury reports, but yes, he was pretty good.
He was. No, I remember I did his radio show my first year, and they asked me, it was Eli Gold asked me, like, what's the difference between Bill Belichick and Nick Saban? I said, because I have covered both. And I said, Nick Saban talks about injuries a lot more. And I think Nick kind of came in and gave an answer. Like, he had nothing to hide there, basically. So that from just a PR standpoint, if you will, I think that's something that Kalen probably needs to improve on. It's something that it leaves so many doubts when he's kind of talking about injuries and uses a lot of words that kind of convolute the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, he said Austin was going through some things, which I think to a lot of people has a connotation outside of injuries. I think when you say someone is going through things, I think the general public's going to think mental health or think something like that. And that obviously, I don't think was the case based on what Kalen said after he was kind of pressed on it and asked to follow up and, gave a little bit more, said he was dinged up, but dinged up is such a broad term. And even if you do get Kalen talking about injuries, he's going to go the NHL style and say upper body or lower body. And look, I can understand if you're
being evaluated,
if you're trying to protect a player, but it's April 12th or April 11th on that particular day. Like, he's not playing a game for another 5 months. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it's funny, I was looking at, yesterday, the Boston Celtics had their last home game, their last regular season game, and had a bunch of players who were sitting out the game because it was the last game of the year. So they have their injury report. You can go right down the list. They list every single little injury, like left finger tendonitis, like each player. That's Joe Mazzulla and the Boston Celtics, who have won a national title, national championship, if you will, NBA championship within the last couple of years. Like, it's okay to do that. Like, it's not going to sink your ship. East Carolina's not looking at your injury report in April. Like, here's all these things we're learning about players. So I understand, like, if coaches are a little bit hesitant because they don't want to say something that then they have to backtrack on, whatever the case may be. I can understand a week of a game, but even these days with availability reports, like, there's no point in playing the game that you're going to hide things. So I don't know. That's my rant on it. It's something I think he needs to improve on. I think, especially when you're talking about a quarterback and you're talking about a quarterback race and people are listening to the press conference, and to say he's going through some things is just going to lead people in the wrong direction. And I agree that it probably should have been something that was a little bit more forthright. Like, yeah, Austin's dealing with a XYZ injury, and that's why he was limited today. And, he wasn't full strength, essentially. Like, just say it.
Yeah. It's weird starting off a podcast with a tangent, but it's right. It's not the end of the world, but so much of quarterback battles does come down to managing it. And for the most part, they've done a really good job of doing that. I'd give them a lot of credit. I mean, simple fact, you've got last year, you had all three quarterbacks in the room. This year, you've got two good quarterbacks in the room, and you've been very careful about what you've said throughout the offseason. I think this is just an example of maybe being too careful and letting the narrative get away from you a little bit, because it is going to be everybody on Twitter. You look at it right now, is going to say, oh my God, Keelan Russell's the only quarterback worth a damn at Alabama. I will push back when Mike says it doesn't seem night and day difference. I'm trying to think of a better way of saying night and day. It's like day and lunar eclipse. Like, you can see the sun's there with Austin Mack. It's just obscured by a terrible offensive line. And when I say it's a huge difference, it's because I'm looking at not just the individual talent of each quarterback, because I think Austin Mack is a good quarterback who can make some good throws and execute the offense. I'm looking at the totality of the offense and what's missing in it, which is an offensive line and a running game. And to me, right now, Keelan looks like the only quarterback who can supplement that, whether it's in terms of evading pressure and throwing on the run or simply running the ball himself. If you put Austin Mack back there, he's going, as I wrote in my column, he's going to go from a big quarterback to a big target. I mean, that's all he's going to be. He's going to struggle. So I think there's more of a difference there. Can the offensive line get better? I don't know. But yeah, the quarterback battle is going to be the main thing. I don't think it's done. But again, I don't think we can ignore what we saw on Saturday. As much as the health issue is part of that equation, that's what we have to deal with. And what we have to deal with was pretty striking to me.
And Yeah, and there's I think two parts to that because there's kind of their performance on Saturday, which I'll stand by. I don't think it was night and day. I think Keelan was certainly better. I don't know if it was.
There were moments where Keelan wasn't good too.
There were moments where Austin made some throws too. So it wasn't even, but it wasn't like A to F on the grade scale range.
What would you give it?
I'll give Keelan a A- or B+. Depends on. I would have to see more angles of that Ryan Williams route. That the interception.
We have a question about whether there was an issue with the route or Ryan falling off.
Right.
That's a whole other thing.
I'd probably give Austin like a C-, C. Like, I don't think it was terrible. Like,
yeah, I think that's fair.
But then that's just part of it. Yeah. There's the broader question of what they bring to the table from a talent skill set standpoint. And I agree with you. Like Keelan, everything's quicker, as you said or wrote. The release, the feet, the everything. And that might very well be needed, with the offensive line and the running game situation. So from that standpoint, yes, I agree. Like, I think Keelan Russell, if you're asking me right now, is the better option to start. But let's also keep in mind, this is just one of 15 spring practices, one of 3 scrimmages in the spring. You have other practices in the fall. Kalen's been pretty adamant, clear in this particular subject that he doesn't think a decision will need to come until like the 3rd week of August. With the quarterbacks, I don't expect them to announce a decision right now or even a front runner like they did last year with Ryan Grubb. Partly because Ryan Grubb's not talking this week. Maybe if he was, he would. I don't know.
Because he said it last year, we're probably not getting it this year.
Right. That was the day after or 2 days after A-Day last year when Grubb came out and said Ty Simpson would be a starter. But that's just his personality, and I appreciate it, Grubb. It's not Kalen's personality. I don't think they really necessarily want to do that yet. So, look, give all the summer player-led workouts that I think if we're being real, I'm sure coaches are watching to some degree.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
There's everywhere. Not allegedly everywhere, but everywhere. Allegedly.
So you have a lot of other things that we don't see. But from what we saw and what people saw in the stands and on, I mean, this whole thing, like, we can't take photos or videos, but other people can live stream the entire practice. People saw it regardless.
It's worse than the Zapruder film because everybody's got these different angles.
Right.
And from Bryant Dent, it's crazy.
And then Alabama puts out their own kind of all 22 version of it too. So, look, I think there's still more to happen there. I think like Austin Mack still took the first snaps on Saturday. If you were playing a game today, I think Austin Mack would be your starter.
Yes.
If we're talking about playing a game on September 6th or 7th for East Carolina, I think Keelan Russell is the better option right now. But will we be saying the same thing on August 13th as we're saying on April 13th?
Yeah, what's your gut right now? Like, who will the setting for week 1?
I think we're going to see both of them.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I think it would be trading series.
All right.
I think Austin would be the first quarterback, though.
You have the luxury of doing that this year with East Carolina at home, in theory. You didn't really have that last year with Florida State on the road. So you could still trade series and have it be a preseason game and see who you're going to start against Kentucky. Why not?
Yeah. I think even then we talked about it a bunch. You could see it going into maybe week 2, week 3 as well. I know at Kentucky you'd like to have a set guy, but it wouldn't be surprising to us. I don't think
you don't mess around in Kentucky. You can't. They're too good, especially without Mark Stoops. But seriously, I don't think you go on the road in the SEC and mess around too much with that. Like, I think
maybe I don't think it's settled, but I think you need to have a good idea going into that game, and you have a very tight leash.
I don't think that you would flip flop, but I think if you were able to score a few times early, then maybe you get somebody in, the third quarter, that you kind of see what they have and go from there. But East Carolina, in theory, provides you that opportunity. Granted, they were one of the better teams in the American last year. Like, so they're last year one of the better G5 teams, G6, whatever the heck it is. This year it's going to be G6. I don't know if that will continue, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, 100%. We're kind of going to go by position room basis on this Roll Pod and kind of wrap it up. We kind of hit on all the quarterbacks. We're going to continue to hit on the quarterbacks, like I said. If we're talking about the quarterbacks a lot after the ECU game, it wouldn't be surprising either. I guess we'll go offensive line next. It's something that we've kind of continued to allude to both on Roll Pod and on our site, on our boards and social media. Is like they brought in 5 guys as freshmen. They brought in 6 guys through the portal. Your mainstay is Michael Carroll, who moves to right guard. Jackson Lloyd's named the left tackle by Ryan Grubb. We talked about Ryan Grubb kind of going out and saying things, which we appreciate. And then Rayson Delgatti comes in. He's your presumed center. William Sanders is out. I think that needs to be brought up. Like, it's kind of a big injury to not have that spring and have that kind of set line. I don't know. I don't know if this line is still kind of a big work in progress. You brought in a lot of guys, but the O-line one was Jackson Lloyd, Mal Waldrop, who you presume probably William Sanders starts at left guard over Mal Waldrop, Rayson Delgatti, Michael Carroll, and then
Javen James.
Javen James, that's right. One thing I will say, it looks like they know who their 5 is going to be. Now, whether that's good enough or not, we're going to talk about. But I think it's a little bit different than last year where you're rotating so many guys as your potential offensive line one. There's something to be said, and Caleb Ward talked about it after the spring game, like the communication, the filling of the gaps, and not having breaks and gaps when the defensive line come in. Is there something to be said there that 4 of the 5 guys are presumably the starters have been working at the offensive line one for the 15 practices, or is that kind of not really that important to you guys?
If they look better, it might feel more important. It's not.
It's fair.
It's not. It's like varying degrees. Again, like, is it a good thing? Sure, it's good to know. But you also got to go out there and perform. And again, I couldn't tell a difference between the first and second team offensive line. They were both so underwhelming. So, there you have it. And then, getting William Sanders back is going to help. I still think he's got a ton to prove.
Yep.
And I like him. And he was a rotational player last year.
But even that fell off towards the end of the year. It's not like they had Larry Allen at guard last year. They were rotating between a couple guys that they were trying to.
And to Alex's point, like when I say like that's a big injury, I'm not talking about like, oh, he's coming and solving it. I'm saying he needed this spring to kind of get more reps.
To what else they have. He's still probably your best guard.
Right.
Minus Carroll. Like, Carroll's obviously a tackle playing guard.
That's the thing. You return one starter, and that one starter is a guy who started his 6 games as a freshman at a different position.
Yeah.
It's just and you have a new position coach on top of all of that. Like, I wrote about it when he got hired. Like, Adrian Clem's got the hardest job on staff. I don't think it's even close. And he didn't recruit these guys either. And I know, I've said there's no his guys versus their guys. But like, it is, you've been on campus for like 3 months and you're like, I barely know these dudes' names, let alone what they're good at right now. So I'm still trying to figure this out. And it's just, it's just, I don't know how many ways to say that it didn't look good. It can get better because of all that newness at every level, and getting William back and getting Ethan Fields playing. All of those things can contribute to it. But here's the question. Is Rayson Delgatti going to be better than Parker Brailsford? Is Jackson Lloyd going to be better than Caden Proctor? Go down the line. And that line last year was not good to begin with.
Right.
At the very most, it didn't live up to expectations by a mile, let alone they weren't very good. So will they gel? And that's the thing to me. I think there's a ceiling in terms of the overall talent of this group coming together as a 5. I think what they can make up for it is just having a completely different mindset and playing differently and being more physical. And maybe you screw up every now and then, but screw up going fast. We weren't able to see that on Saturday. Maybe we'll get to see more of that moving forward. But it's just right now, I don't know that Alabama's a playoff team with this offensive line. I just don't know I don't know how they get there.
It's a thesis statement. No, I agree. It's their clear weak spot, and like Michael Carroll was pretty open about it. Like Adrian Clem was telling him they had to pick it up. during the scrimmage. It wasn't good. And there was a few runs towards the beginning of the scrimmage where guys were breaking free a little bit.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, look at this. And then, Daniel Hill gets stuffed at the Wildcat, the goal line. The second half of practice, it felt like there was guys in the backfield all day. And I wrote about it. There was a fan in the stands who was pretty.
I knew that would come up on the podcast. Shout out to the early guy.
I said he needs to join our website. He just stood up and started yelling about the offensive line. It was like standing up in church and like starting to sing a Taylor Swift song. It's just like, what are you doing? It's
I don't think the
Alabama football version of speaking in tongues.
Right.
I don't think the 17-year-old security guard thought he was going to have to intervene in any fans during A-Day, but he did.
An A-Day game, you're not expecting people to be, inebriated or whatever the case may be, and he had to walk down and basically tell him to cool down. But it's like it was so obvious to everybody sitting there. It's like the offensive line was just getting dominated.
Yeah.
That's a clear weakness, and you can look around the roster. There's no clear answers. I think their portal class was high volume. I mean, they brought in a lot of guys. I don't know what the quality of that is. I think it's not looking like you're going to get a ton out of Ty Haywood, who I think people were optimistic about given his recruiting ranking, his high school ranking, as a 5-star. But he was with the third team at left tackle on A-Day. Nick Brooks, is huge coming in from Texas, big body, but he was right tackle with the second team. Ethan Fields, I think had gotten some first team reps during the spring, but he was out for an undisclosed, going through some things.
I knew that was coming.
A-Day. If that's the terminology, that's Delgado's, I think, your clear guy that you're going to play at center, but it's kind of because you have to. And your other option is Caden Strayhorn, who you brought in from the portal. So I don't know what you're.
Oh my God!
What?
Said bug eyes watching him out there. It was not. It didn't look pretty. And he's young. He's young, and he was playing out of position last year, and all of those things. But it didn't look great.
I think a lot of the things we've been hearing about the room kind of showed itself. On Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Enough about the offensive line. Tight ends, wide receivers, running backs. Which way are we going?
We're going running backs, which I guess directly ties into the offensive line, like you said. But I think my biggest takeaway, and yes, he did get stuff at the goal line. We can talk about the red zone towards the end of it because that's where they ended with it. But there was some cuts I think that Daniel Hill made that he probably wasn't making last year. We've talked about his weight loss. I know it was only 8 to 10 pounds, but it seems like it made a little bit of a difference. Trayshawn Brown, there was some high points as well. But I guess my single biggest takeaway is not having EJ Crowell on the field. I think, he's obviously losing valuable reps. Caleb DeBoer was asked about him and his potential impact, and he kind of talked about how we don't know right now.
It's a question when you don't play.
Right, which, that's something for another day. But, you wish you wanted to see him, what he looks like. Again, Trayshawn Brown showed some flashes. A.K. Deere was at 5. Whatever. I think Kevin Riley, was whatever. How much does that have to do with the offensive line and a better defensive? Looks like it's probably going to be better defensive line. We'll get into that. But, the running backs, I don't really know. It's kind of more of the same. Again, Daniel Hill looked a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree with that. There was a stretch play to the left that he cut back up the middle and ran for 12 yards and showed a lot of burst. And then there was a 3rd and 1 where he ran into the line and it was going nowhere, and he bounced out, cut back, and picked and moved the chains. But kind of few and far between. And I mostly judge the offensive line on that. I did think he looked better without the running game looking better, if that makes sense. I think A.K. Deere, as I turned to you during the game, Brett, I think, is in danger of entering Richard Young territory, where it's we see sort of the potential, but is it going to get there? Because I think Trayshawn Brown's got a chance, man. I think Trayshawn might even, again, we're getting into hot take territory. So there's a disclaimer. I think Trayshawn Brown might do it. I think Trayshawn does what Kevin Riley does at a higher level. Yep. I think he's a little bit more quicker. I don't know what you want to call it, but you saw him catch the ball out of the backfield. You saw him literally lined up at receiver and using him. And I was just like, that looks a little different to me. Maybe it's wearing 17 and I'm used to Brooks last year. I don't know what it is. But like, I think he's, Mike was on that train early, but I think he's got a chance. Crowell's obviously the wild card in all of this, but look, I don't feel better about the running backs. I just don't because of the offensive line. But I think the point you made about Hill is right on, and then it's just trying to figure out how Brown develops, whether the light ever comes on for Deere, and what Crowell does if he can get healthy.
Yeah, I'll let Mike go in a second.
At some point we got to just say if, not when, because you missed the entire spring. You're out there on a boot with a cart. It's not a good look if you want to talk about that guy being, one of your top backs next year.
Yeah, and I'll let Mike go in a second. But Brown, I think maybe the word you're looking for is kind of twitchier, maybe.
Yeah.
And runs with a little bit more violence, I think, downfield compared to Kevin Riley. But go ahead, Mike.
When's the last time they had like a scat back like that? Like I could see Trayshawn Brown being like a third down back.
A true.
Wasn't everyone was calling him? Was it Josh Jacobs after the?
That was a while ago.
Right.
Josh Jacobs was before my time here. I can't even think
I don't think Kenyon Drake qualified.
That was before my time. Like
Kenyon
I'm thinking the last 7 years.
Like it feels like an insult to call a guy a scat back, but Kenyon's best quality was getting outside and just running the heck out of the football. I don't know who's a true scat back at
I
all.
feel like they had some guys that were like candidates, like Emmanuel Henderson and Christian Leary, that were kind of like hybrid running back, wide receiver types. But I can't think of one in the last 7 years that really qualifies. So anyway, it could be, maybe it's him.
Jeremy Bernard.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
he was probably their third most effective running back last year.
That's 100% right.
Yeah. I don't know what the pecking order is going to be at running back. I mean, Kevin Riley got the first snaps with the first team on Saturday. Daniel Hill's in that mix. I don't know if Deere right now is one of the top 2, but he's a top 3. But how does EJ factor into that? How does Brown factor into that? I don't know. Running back's an interesting position. At the end of the day, I don't know if it matters a whole lot with the offensive line. I think you're going to have to be throwing the ball offensively here to win.
Yes.
And look, that's what Kalen DeBoer's done historically. Like, let's not forget, like, he's a pass-heavy offense. You have some receivers. You have potentially a quarterback. Like, you have some tools to execute that. But you're not going to have a running game and an offensive line to support it, I don't think. That's not how it's looking. So we'll have to see what happens. I think your best quality from your running backs might be the ability to pass protect, which A.K. Deere got blown up by Steve Bumla. The video that was kind of circulating on Saturday.
Yeah.
Anyway,
tight end position, maybe another group that can kind of help block a little bit. I think my biggest takeaway there was it seems to be a pretty set, clear 3-man rotation between Josh Ford, Marshall Pritchett, who scored the first touchdown. That was plus, I think, whatever odds for on the sports book there. Who I really like, Marshall Pritchett. I think he continues to improve. You heard about him. Coaches have talked about him all spring. He had a good second spring scrimmage, I believe it was. And then Caleb Edwards, who obviously was very good or emerged as a freshman. And this tight end room is very important to this offense. The staff has talked about everything we hear behind the scenes. They continue to kind of revamp that. But I thought those 3 looked pretty good. I thought Josh Ford looked pretty impressive. That was kind of one of my main things I wanted to see in person because I've been up there for practices, what he looked like physically. He's a big guy. They moved him in motion a lot. He had a lot of pre-snap movement. But again, it seems like Richard Owens, the tight ends coach, has got to found his 3, and there's going to be a lot of rotation between Ford, Edwards, and Pritchett.
And probably Lindsey, I think, works as well in some situations. He's more of a blocker, but and I guess in theory, if Danny Lewis ever gets healthy, then maybe he's one of your top 4. But that's big if.
We forgot he was on the team. He's injured all the time. Look, it's hard to judge a guy like Ford in a game like that because he's known as a physical guy.
Yeah,
and going to help you the most in the running game. Wasn't overwhelmed with the passing game part of it. Edwards obviously got a catch there. The more you watch Pritchett, though, the more you kind of like what he can give you there in terms of the athleticism. He seems to be a guy who just kind of flies around. The question is, with any young guy, does he know what he's doing yet? Who knows? But you kind of like the potential there. I don't know that they've got a Cuevas in that room. but they can maybe supplement it with more depth. I think more quality depth this year than they did the year before. It was just, I wonder if they're going to need more of those blocking guys, considering what they don't have up front with the offensive line. Which, to your point, Jay Lindsey is probably a guy who I think you could, even if you wanted to have him as a lead blocker, you could probably put him back there and do a little bit of that, like you did with Oots a couple of years ago.
Oops.
Yeah. When you look back, one of the more undervalued players on that team.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know, Mike. I know. You'll be right about everything.
I've said it many times. Everybody's saying it.
The other group of pass catchers, obviously the receivers. I guess the biggest storyline is obviously the injury to Noah Rogers. What happens, what comes of that, if we even hear anything until fall practice starts, who knows? We're going to continue to dig there. But, yeah, he goes down on a kind of route in the end zone, kind of immediately falls down, goes to the tent, was in the tent for not very long, comes out on a cart with like a full, believe me, correct me if I'm wrong, but looked like a full leg brace kind of from your thigh to your ankle type of thing on his left leg.
Towel over his head.
Yeah, towel over his head. Didn't look great. I think that's, obviously a big storyline. I think the other storylines were Cedarian Morgan showed some flashes, and everything you heard about him from high school ranks that I did. And Ryan Grubb talked about how he's not going to take long to get onto the field. From a physicality standpoint, he looks the part. Derek Meadows looked good, and then you got Rico Scott, who had a nice run after catch, kind of physical run after catch that he's kind of showed flashes with his last 2 years. Obviously, you got Ryan Williams. He made a couple catches. We can debate it whether he fell down or ran the wrong route or on the Keelan Russell interception, but
he might have run the right route, and Keelan could have been wrong too.
Right.
There are many options
there. 100%. I think it kind of goes back to what we've said kind of in the offseason as well. Like, yeah, you need to add more bodies into the room, but your top 5 to 6 are legit. I don't know if you guys feel differently after watching, getting the 2 open practices on Saturday.
I think quietly the most important thing to happen was Ryan Williams didn't drop the football.
Yeah.
It's something we, for better or for worse, have had to pay a lot of attention to. And if he had done that at A-Day, everybody would have lost their ever living what. So to see him continue to have a good spring by all accounts is really taking another step in the right direction, because, again, we know the potential's there. And if there's ever a time where the light should come on, it should be now, considering what's ahead of him in terms of being draft eligible. Didn't see it a ton for Latzir Brooks. I think he had 1 or 2 catches. He looked fine. You don't sort of question that, considering what we saw from him as a freshman too much. Look, Cedarian Morgan's going to get the most attention because he's the former 5-star, and he looked really good in some moments. That touchdown that he had in the seam, he just cooked whoever was covering him. It was like immediately off the line, you could see that, it's the ability to get open. It's not questioning the size or the ability to finish. Can you get open? And that's a really good sign there. But I think the biggest positive was Derek Meadows. And he's a guy who I've continued, Brett and I have continued to talk about. I'll give you credit. Like, he played quite a bit last season. I had that concussion against Missouri, which set him back. He didn't have any catches, but he played a lot. He's physical, he's big, and he doesn't seem to drop the football. Even if he's just kind of that outlet guy that they have kind of sitting along the sidelines, if you need him, like, that's a valuable piece. And he's just continued to look the part there. And I think if Noah Rogers is out, look, you want that guy because he's explosive. There's a lot of belief in what he can bring in terms of stretching the field vertically. And you hope that he can come back in some form or fashion at some point, whether that's, during the summer, during camp, and early in the season, whatever it is. But I think the emergence of those 2 young receivers gives you some optimism, especially when you consider what they bring to the offense. Maybe they're not burners necessarily, but 6'4", 6'5", that's something that's been missing from this offense for a while, and I think could show up in the red zone if they can get in there.
Yeah, I think even if it is a significant injury for Rodgers, I think you still have 5 guys, I think, that you're pretty, optimistic about, in Coleman Williams, Brooks, Scott, Meadows, Morgan. After that, though, like, that room was thin from a numbers standpoint. That was kind of a big issue this winter. And so if you do lose Rodgers, your depth is a little bit shaky in terms of if there's another injury or if you're going through a week of practice during the season and somebody's banged up, you're going to be a little bit thinner, because they kind of filled it out with a couple freshmen, Henderson and Amari Sab, who's not here yet. He will be soon. Maurice Mathis, so there's not a whole lot behind the top five in terms of experience or any of that. So that would be the concern if you lost Rodgers. But Rodgers was one of the top three guys, with the first team on Saturday. So if he's okay, and we're talking about him playing in the fall, let's not forget about him either. And he was a guy, again, second scrimmage. Nobody saw it because we're all talking about the scrimmage that we could see, but the scrimmage that we couldn't see. Kalen DeBoer was talking about Noah Rodgers being quite the standout. Mm-hmm. So again, it's kind of it's a matter of visibility sometimes in terms of what we're talking about. But I think the receiver room is okay. In terms of even if there is an injury, I think you're going to be okay there. But it's also a room that I think you're really going to have to lean on, given what you don't have along the offensive line and potentially at running back too. If you're talking about trying to win a national championship, because this is Alabama, that's what you try to do. You're going to have to be throwing the ball, and you're going to have to be really beating some teams through the air and doing what Washington did 3 years ago. So, I think you have the guys to do that at receiver, but it still has to be better than what it was last year or even a year before that.
And I'll go back to the point I made at the beginning. We can spend all our time talking about the fourth, fifth, and sixth receiver, and that's what spring inevitably devolves into is who can carve a role. Ryan Coleman Williams needs to be a superstar. I don't think it's complicated. I think you need him to be exactly who he can be and who you believe he can be, because the quarterback's going to need it, the offensive line's going to need it, the running back's going to need it. Your margin for error is thin, and you need that guy to make big plays because it changes the gravitational pull of a defense when he can do what he does. Just ask Kirby Smart. It's different. Yeah. So you need him to be a dude, and then you can sort of fill in the blanks later. And they do have their top end depth is good enough. Mike's right about their overall depth, but you got to piece it together. And to me, it's number one. You got to start with him.
Do we want to do overall on the defense so that people don't have to listen to us talk for too long?
Yeah, that's fine. I was going to go position by position. I was going to say we don't need to do a whole lot on the secondary just because.
See Bolo and Boomo 1 minute, which everybody wants.
We have to at least spend a minute on him.
Because he blew up a running back. Shocker, you're a defensive tackle. You're supposed to blow up a running back.
Who's a massive human being. I think, and I don't want to take out of your – it feels like, again, you're going against an offensive line that, quite frankly, we don't know how good it can be or how good it really is. But it does feel like from a look standpoint and the pressures and everything in between, everything you're hearing, Terrence Green, Devon Tompkins, those two I think are going to be really, really good. Mike?
Yeah, no, I think, again, that's where you kind of spent your money. In terms of those are your top portal players in terms of the guys you brought in. I think that was their focus in trying to improve the defensive line. Mm-hmm. I would still go back to the fact that Tim Keenan and LT Overton, I think, were considered good players for you last year. And when they were not playing because of injuries, that was big stories in both cases. So it's not starting from zero. It's the margin of what's the difference between those players. But I think there's still going to be a lot of variability in terms of what they run. I know there's been a lot of talk about that. Are they going to run bigger fronts and a lot of, chatter about that? I think it's still going to be a mix, and I'm sure still very opponent specific. Even last year, depending on the opponent they were playing, they were in a 3-4 sometimes. South Carolina was one of those teams. I think they played a 3-4 against a decent amount. So you might see some of that. You might see 3 down linemen, 2 outside linebackers. You might see 2 down linemen, 2 outside linebackers. You might see 3 down linemen, 1 outside linebacker. You're going to see different combinations of it. So I wouldn't read a ton into that. But, you have, I think, your bandit in Tompkins, and that's the guy you can probably slide inside if you are running a 2-4. I think Green he's a player. He's a big dude, 6'5". He batted down a pass. He was also unblocked. I think it was a screen pass, and he batted down. Might have been, was it Keelan or Kawa towards the end?
I think it was Keelan.
I don't know if he can play him, but like every single snap though. Like I think he's still a situational player, but you're going to be rotating through some defensive linemen. London Simmons has been out for the spring, was not in uniform on Saturday. Edric Hill, who played a good amount of snaps for you last year, was not practicing. Jeremiah Beeman, who was out last year, was not practicing. Fatutoa Henry was not practicing. So you're down some bodies along the defensive line. But I think what we saw from Tompkins and Green and Bumua,
Bingley Jones?
Bingley Jones is the other one. Yep. Like,
How's it not?
it looked pretty good.
A surprise.
He played a lot.
Yeah, it looked pretty good. Caleb Smith came in a little bit at Bandit. Mari Johnson, the freshman, was playing some Bandit. Isaiah Fega was playing some tackle. Corey Howard, the freshman, was in there. That was kind of your group along the defensive line. I think you have your three Wolves between Pierre and Justin Hill. They were on the field at the same time sometimes. You had Umazulu, who was your third Wolf, but he was usually kind of as a down lineman, kind of what they did with Keon Keeley last year. I think that's probably a fair role comparison. Kind of bring him in as
play more, but the same role. Yeah.
Right. And then they threw some other guys at Wolf too. I saw Griffin in there kind of on the edge.
Yeah.
I think I saw Duke Johnson in there for a play. They do was more of a goal line formation.
Xavier Griffin was in there with the first team early, I think, right? I don't know if it was like one or two snaps, but
not much, but a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the defense as a whole, your biggest question mark is the second inside linebacker spot by far.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have Caleb Woodson out there, and then you just don't know who's going to be next to him. They were rotating through all sorts of guys there between Luke Metz and Caden Jones and QB Reese and Abdul Sanders and Duke Johnson. Like, you have five guys who could play that spot. And I think if Xavier Griffin really comes along quickly, like he has the talent to put him on the field at some point. So big question mark. Don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if there's a ton of plays inside linebacker wise that I remember, from Saturday. And then in the secondary,
tackle for loss at one point.
Yeah. Okay. In the secondary, I mean, you're missing Xavier Brown and Bray Hubbard. So let's keep that in mind. Both of those guys are starters. I know some people aren't as high on Bray as others. I think Bray Hubbard's going to be starting for this team. I think he's going to be a captain.
Doesn't think he's going to be a starter.
Have you read our message board?
What position though, Alex?
I think he's going to be starting. I think Bray Hubbard and Keon Sabb are starting safety.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know people Keon Sabb finished the season as a starter. We need to see him return to form.
People are excited about Ivan Taylor. People are excited about, or were excited about Xavier Mincy a year ago. People are excited about Tyler Edwards. I think all those guys are going to play in some capacity. But I think if you're asking me who's starting at safety, I think Bray Hubbard and Keon Sabb are still pretty firmly in that role.
Yes. Bray Hubbard's going to be a captain, people.
100%.
Red Morgan's your Husky. So there's not a whole lot of questions. I think Carmelo O'Neal looked fine at corner. There's no film to go back and look at. And, what did Carmelo O'Neal look like?
Scrub the internet.
But, he's your third corner. You have an experienced guy who I think you relatively can trust. It's fine. Secondary's fine. Nobody's worrying about the secondary.
Yeah. There's a few things there. Well, big picture, though, we've spent 2 years going, oh, my God, look at the way they rotate on defense. I think Kane is going to say, hold my beer and watch what I do this year, because they have numbers. When you talk about the D-line, they're going to have to be – Freddie Roach needs those dudes practicing 25-yard sprints, because it's just going to be go. Because you're right. It's interior. It's exterior linemen. It's the whole shebang. That's a really good thing to have if you can have those guys playing at a high level. Because I do wonder what the rep distribution is going to be. I think Devon Tompkins is going to be a guy who's going to play a ton. I don't know who else is you don't come off the field kind of guy. Because to Mike's point, Terrence Green is going to play a lot. But I think depending on packages, you're going to want him off the field sometimes. Bingley Jones, I think, could play a lot. Fega could play a lot. Edric Hill could play a lot. We don't even know London Simmons in there. It's crazy. And then in the secondary, you've got all these pieces too. And look, I've said it before, I think I said before the game started, one of the biggest upsets to me is Drake Kirkpatrick is still on this football team. And then he goes out there and he makes plays. And it's he's going to want to play him. And he's going to want to play Red Morgan. And he's going to want to play Ivan Taylor. And these are all good things. Don't get me wrong. It's just going to be I think fans need to get a little bit ready for it. And I'm curious to see how he mixes and matches all of those pieces, because especially when you look at the secondary, it's not like you're mixing and matching to cover things up. You're trying to accentuate it. In the front seven, it's a little bit different, especially if you're talking about the O-line. I mean, not the O-line, the inside linebackers and the outside linebackers. How much does Yanze Pierre play with his hand in the dirt? I don't know. Mike was paying more attention to the defense than I was on Saturday. I don't even know if you could get a good feel for it there.
I don't have a breakdown. I think maybe a couple times, but
like, how much does he actually end up playing Bandit versus Wolf? I don't know. They're going to move all these dudes around. To me, it's not as drastic as what I wrote today, where I think the only thing that matters is the offensive line. But I think if this defense is going to go from good / very good to great, it's that inside linebacker room. That to me is the let's see how it goes. Because even Woodson, who on paper looks really good, he didn't jump out to me on Saturday. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, he was fine, and maybe that's good enough, you know. And the fact that you don't really know who your second guy is there yet. You've got options, but you don't know. Like, these dudes have gone through A-Day, some of them 3 times already. Like, that's not my question. My question is, when they get into games, how are they going to perform? Are they going to tackle at a higher level? Because the past 2 years with better experience, they haven't tackled it at a very high level. They're, to me, the key to the whole thing. And whether this – I know this is a really high floor. It's to me, they're going to determine the ceiling of it.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
I'll just say they're not the 85 Bears either. Like,
yeah.
Even with the offense's problems, they were still moving the ball at times against this defense on Saturday. Like, the offense scored touchdowns multiple times. They were in the goal line. They were in the red zone. Like, Fernando Mendoza he was 14 of 16 for 192 yards, 3 touchdowns, a 250 passing efficiency rating, and a 97 quarterback rating against a lot of the same players on this defense last year, including Dijon Lee, and including Xavier Brown, including Ray Hubbard, including Keon Sabb, including Red Morgan, including Yanze Pierre. So they still got some work to do. And they
need dudes who can go get the quarterback. That, to me, is how you get to that part of the discussion.
I think they can be good, but I think they're not bulletproof. And yeah, I agree, though. The inside linebacker spot, I think, is your biggest concern.
Yeah. Loaded show to wrap it up in 30 seconds or less. We got to always kind of wrap it up the same way.
Special teams segment.
Come
on.
Mike.
Come on, guys.
Special teams. Lord Quinn. The Lord
you
Quinn
could just sense the anxiety in the
oh my god! And then
when Connor Talty missed
when you miss it, and then he came out, he hit an extra point, and he looked like he won the championship. He looked like he was going to punch somebody in the face. And look, you know, cathartic, I guess. And he's a fiery type guy. We've gotten that, but Lorcan Quinn probably looks like your place kicker number 1, and it's not just he was perfect on the day. He's got some leg, man. I mean, there was that 47-yarder he made with plenty of room to spare. Will it translate once they get into Kroger Field, vaunted Kroger Field? Or, you know, it's the Mississippi State game. It's at Starkville, yeah. So,
yeah. You know. I mean, I would point more towards the games after that.
Like, is it going to translate to all of that? We don't know. But I think you can feel better if you're an Alabama fan about the place kicking situation than you did last year, where you probably lost sleep.
I don't know about that. I'm not willing to make that statement yet.
You don't think you should feel better at least having an option? You already know what Connor Talty is.
You haven't. Yes, it's nice having another option. You didn't really have one last year. You have competition. I think right now I would agree Lorcan Quinn is probably a little bit ahead, but I think they're both still going to be competing.
Yeah.
And we just don't know. There's way too much unknown there for me to feel better about it. But
I saw a 47-yard field goal go through the uprights. How long has it been since we've seen that?
Connor Talty hit field goals at the end of last year. Like,
it happened.
He was better at the end of last year than he was in the middle of last year.
Yeah. He missed a field goal and
I have no idea what the punting situation is. We saw one punt from Alex Scarborough on Saturday. We didn't see Adam Watford, the North Alabama transfer punt. So it's a big old question mark. I have no idea about the punting game.
Yeah. As far as returners go, I think Ryan Williams did the first one, and then Lottie Brooks did the second one, which we'll save that for another time about as far as who should return or who we think there. But
either one of those.
No, me neither.
Now, granted, look, I will say kickoff return is a little bit different. It's punt return to me that I get more apprehensive about. But yeah, I mean, it's just preference.
Yeah.
Returns don't matter anymore in football. It's a dead thing.
Yeah.
Right. Alex, we'll start with you. 30 seconds or less. What is Kalen DeBoer coming off that field, coming off the press conference, going into the final week of practice, 2 more practices Tuesday and Thursday of this week, and then it's summer, technically summer for the football schedule. What is he top of the list? Is it we kind of have the same question at every podcast. What's keeping him up? What's top of the list for him?
It's twofold. It's can you get Austin with a little bit of confidence going through the end of spring, because even Ryan Williams talked about going up to Austin near the end of the scrimmage and basically saying this is just one moment. Like, don't worry about this. And it kind of shows that, hey, maybe there's a little bit of apprehension there, but there's only one thing to genuinely worry about. How in the bleep are you going to get the offensive line playing at a higher level? What is that going to take? Is it going to require some voodoo? I don't know. But, some specialists coming in to help them, whatever it might be. You got to figure it out.
No, I don't know if that's going to happen. Michael Carroll said he's going to go see O-line masterminds.
Yeah.
The Duke Manyweather, who worked with Tommy Booker in Dallas. Because he was talking about how they need to come together. And I kind of asked him, like, are you going to have group sessions or whatever this summer? And he said he was actually going to go train in Dallas, which he's an NFL type prospect. Like, that's kind of the thing that they do. But yeah, the offensive line is clearly the thing that's going to keep Kalen DeBoer up at night. He was asked about it after the scrimmage and, kind of took the positive route and said that they had good communication and at least they were doing the right thing when the play started, I think was the way he phrased it, essentially. After that, different story, but at least they weren't screwing up from a assignment standpoint, I think was his message. But clearly, I think everybody in the building,
very low.
Right. Everybody in the building, including our dear friend in the section next to us, offensive line was the biggest question.
Yeah, no doubt. Loaded show. Again, A-Day on last Saturday. Mike, Alex, and myself were there. Alabama has 2 more spring practices on Tuesday and Thursday of this week. We're recording this on Monday, April 13th. Then we'll get into summer player workouts like you alluded to, with some coaches probably with binoculars from wherever they need to be, kind of just watching over. So we'll be back probably sometime next week, probably hit on some Alabama basketball transfer portal news. Alabama obviously added Kentucky center Brent Garrison on Sunday night. So Alabama, Nate Oates, Preston Murray kind of moving in silence right now. We'll see what looks like over the next couple of days as visits continue to roll in and the portal keeps going. But we'll be back next week, like I said, most likely focus on a little bit of basketball. Thank you, guys.